Hi, and thanks for joining me. I'm Claire Aiken with Indigo Marketing Agency, and today we're going to talk about webinar marketing for financial advisors. So I'm going to cover everything that you need to know to create your first webinar to start this marketing process. Now, we're going to cover a lot, so I'm going to move quickly because I know you're really busy and your time is valuable. But today we're going to talk about how advisors are using webinars, why webinars are so powerful, the technologies that you should use to create your webinars, and we're going to give you 10 steps to get started creating your first webinar. Then we'll talk about how to promote your webinar and how many leads that you should expect. So stay tuned to the end to ask a question and to get a free gift. Thanks for joining me. Let's get started.
All right. Thanks so much for joining me. I'm Claire Aiken, and this is Webinar Marketing for Financial Advisors. Now, if you don't know me, I want to give you a little bit about my story. I'm a former investment advisor representative, and I grew up in the industry because my dad's an investment advisor, and he's been in the business 37 years, and he was one of the first reps with LPL Financial when they first started out, when they were Linsco Private Ledger in 1981. And so I definitely grew up in the industry. I understand some of the challenges that financial advisors face with marketing and how things have changed over the past couple decades, and what worked in the past doesn't work anymore. And so I understand that, it's challenging to adapt your marketing and to do things differently to get clients to grow your business. And so that takes a little bit of investment in new techniques. And so I really appreciate you guys joining me to learn some new techniques that are going to help take your marketing into the future. I also have a bachelor's degree in economics from UC Davis, go Ags, and a master's degree in marketing at UC San Diego. I worked at FMG Suite, which is the leading website provider for financial advisors, and I started my own company, Indigo Marketing Agency, to help top advisors really embrace a specialty with their marketing. And I also wrote a book called The LinkedIn Guide for Financial Advisors, which you can check out on Amazon, on Kindle, or in a paperback copy. And you can take the LinkedIn course for financial advisors if you're interested in using LinkedIn to target prospects that fit within your specialty. So webinars are really important to me, and I'm passionate about webinars. As you guys know, I do a webinar every month. I give away 90% of what I know about marketing for advisors, and it's been so successful for me. And so I really want to share that with you guys because it's how I built my business between webinars and LinkedIn. That's how I grew my email list and got all of my clients. And that's just how I share my knowledge with people so that they can understand what I do and how I help advisors. And so in the last 6 months alone, I've doubled my email list just with my webinar prospecting marketing strategy. And so I highly recommend it. I've been on webinars for companies, broker-dealers, key influencers, and it's such a great way to build your network and to become kind of a subject matter expert so that people can get to know you without you meeting with 1,000 people individually. You can do webinars, and so many people can learn from you and get to know you, and it gives you kind of the maximum bang for your buck. And so through my work, I've created a system for advisor clients to use webinars in marketing to their own prospects. It's been really successful, and I'm excited to share it with you today. It's something that I've been waiting months to kind of get the word out there about how webinars are working for advisors. So today we're going to cover a lot. We're going to talk about how advisors are using webinars, why webinars are so powerful, choosing the best topics for your audience because your webinar is only as powerful as the topic that you choose, 10 steps to creating your first webinar, which technologies to use. And I get a lot of questions about which technologies to use, so I'll go into detail about everything that you need to know on that subject. And then how many leads to expect, because the great thing about using webinars to market is they're very predictable. They have a predictable conversion rate, and if you do them over and over and you get people to register, you can get new clients each and every month using this system. Stick around till the end because I will give away a free gift at the end of the presentation, and let's get started. So a couple of the top advisors that I work with use webinars every single month to fill their pipeline. And these are people that are running big firms. They have billions with a B, assets under management, and every month they use webinars. So a lot of advisors in the past used seminars, and that worked in the old days. But now, as you guys know, it's very expensive to do seminars, and it's expensive with your time. You have to show up, you have to feed people dinner, you have to worry about plate lickers coming and, sitting through your seminars just to get a free dinner. And so webinars are a great way to showcase what you know and how you can help without having to put on the expense of an in-person seminar. They are fantastic for employer-specific campaigns, and that's how a lot of my top advisors use them. They're efficient for personal client education. And so I have some advisors who do a webinar every quarter to do market updates or to communicate about their firm with their clients. So kind of an alternative to a client meeting. You could do a quarterly client webinar. And they're excellent for growing your network. So if you partner with CPAs or lawyers or other people in your community, key influencers in your community, to answer questions or cover a certain topic, it's a great way to get people on their email list to become aware of you and maybe sign up for your email list. And so it's just a great cross-pollination opportunity. So you can see the example here is your portfolio ready for the election? And this is just one of my clients did this webinar, a free financial education webinar. And basically they brought in an expert, and the advisor talked about, what the election was going to do to markets. And it got a really high attendance rate. It was really effective for them. And so any topic, the sky's the limit as far as which topic you cover, but webinars are just a great way to start the conversation with prospects. So why are webinars so powerful? So I don't really need to spell this out for you guys because I'm kind of preaching to the choir, because you guys are attending a webinar right now. And so you understand the power, right? Because if you came to my website and you read a couple of pages on my website, you would maybe get an idea of what I do. But by listening to this webinar and by engaging with this webinar, you get a lot more of my personality, my background, my insights. You feel like you know me. You feel like you understand more of what I do and how I can help. And so it's just so much more powerful than a blog post or a website to really communicate what makes you different. So another great thing about webinars is they're scalable for small or large audiences. So in the past with seminars, you have this huge outlay of cash to have this big event. And if only a couple people show up, you've still spent a huge amount of money. So webinars are scalable. So if 2 people show up or 200 people show up, it's still a cost-effective endeavor for you. They're also an effective avenue to share complex ideas. And so, maybe your specialty is legacy planning for the wealthy, or, social security claiming strategies for spouses. These are things that are a little bit dry, and they're not as easy to communicate with a blog post or in writing, but they really lend themselves to webinars. And so by distributing this information in webinar form, you're able to have it resonate more with your potential clients. You also can capture email addresses to grow your email list with webinars. So even if somebody watches your webinar and they don't become a client, they're still on your email list so that you can nurture them over time and hopefully convert them later. It's a great avenue to have a call to action at the end to urge people to take the next step, and they have high conversion rates. So webinar conversion rates range from 20 to 40% versus 3 to 5% for email. So it's a great high impact way to convert more of your prospects. They can showcase your expertise. They're definitely more personal than articles, and they can be used forever. And so you can set up an automated webinar and have it run over and over and over for new clients. And it's something where, think about doing your sales pitch that you do at a coffee shop or in a client's home or at your office over and over. This can be automated, so your sales pitch is ongoing in a digital format while you're doing other things, while you're on the beach having a pina colada. So it's a great avenue to use into the future, and it's very powerful. So let's talk about automating your marketing. So imagine that you have a webinar that converts well, that is on your area of expertise. So we could use Facebook or LinkedIn ads to drive traffic to the registration page where people sign up for your webinar. And then they watch the webinar where they get to know, like, and trust you. At the end, the presentation explains the next step and creates a sense of urgency for them to take the next step. And then the call to action sends people to your calendar scheduler, so an online calendar scheduler, and the new appointments pop up on your calendar for you to take a phone call with a new prospect who already understands what you do, how you help, and is ready to talk about their needs and how you can help them. And so it's a way to truly automate your marketing so that new leads show up on your calendar without you actually doing anything. So webinars also can qualify prospects. And this is a big thing. I look at all the new leads that come in from my advisor clients. And this week I saw a lead come in where the person wrote an email to the advisor saying, I want to invest my money, but I don't want to pay a fee for investment management or advice. Are you an advisor that can help me without a fee? So I don't know any other profession where somebody would ask you to do your job for free, but that's what this prospect was asking. And so we want to qualify out these people. We don't want them to waste your time. And so webinars can do that. You can talk about your minimum investable assets. You can talk about your minimum account size. You can talk about who you serve best. And no more selling to everyone. Instead, you do targeted presentations that are directed at what you do best, at your specialty, and they explain the value that you offer. And so interested people who are qualified can take action, and you can sit back and, be ready to meet with them and do more of what you do best instead of doing all the qualification in person in your office where you can waste a lot of time. So the challenge of traditional webinars is basically that, it's hard to do a live event. If you don't do live events all the time, it can be scary. You can have technology challenges. You can maybe get nervous and not present as well as you should live. You could have a low attendance rate because people have to be available at that day and time. And it's difficult from a compliance perspective because compliance likes to see everything in advance. And so doing live events can be kind of hit or miss with compliance. Of course, it's possible, but it's definitely challenging. So what I recommend is automated webinars. And it's what I use for my own webinars. And it's what I really recommend for my advisor clients because I've seen so many advisors get really stressed and have issues with running live webinars. And there's no gold medal that people are going to give you because you did a live webinar. I think it's much more important to do a webinar that respects people's time. And so you make sure you deliver maximum value and that you have no technology issues so that the people watching your webinar get the best version of your presentation. So automated webinars feel like a live webinar. Somebody goes to the registration page, they pick which day and time is best for them, and a software system plays the webinar for them at that time. The software system also sends out the thank you for signing up email, the reminder email, maybe a day or an hour before the webinar starts, and the replay the day after the webinar. And so it saves a lot of your time, and it's a great way to set up your webinars so that they feel like a live webinar, but you get some other advantages, like you can record your webinar in advance and get compliance approval. So compliance has signed off on the final video of your presentation, so you have no compliance headaches or no concerns. It removes any technology risk, so you don't have to worry if your internet goes down or if your audio isn't working right that day. We make sure your webinar is perfect. You know it's going to play correctly every single time. You don't have any live broadcast jitters, and we have double the engagement over live webinars. And it's kind of interesting to me when people sign up for a live event, you'd think they would attend, but of course things come up. And I see more than half of people watch the replay of the webinar. And so you're effectively getting double the people to view your presentation by doing an automated webinar with an automated replay. And so I'm going to tell you right now 10 steps to create your first webinar for your marketing campaign. And we're going to focus on automated webinars because of all the reasons I just listed. So the first thing you want to do is select a topic, and then we're going to build your offer or your call to action, create your presentation, design it, record it, and then of course get compliance approval. Then we'll talk about setting up your automated webinar, building your registration page, promoting it, and following up with the leads that your webinar generates. So the first thing you want to do is selecting your topic. Now, your webinar attendance rate is going to be only as strong as the topic that you select. And so it's critically important that you select a topic that is interesting, relevant, and valuable to your target audience. And so consider when you're thinking of, what should your webinar be on, consider the questions that you get most frequently from your top clients or your top prospects. Maybe it's about lowering the fees on their investments. Maybe it's about taxes. Maybe it's about the risk in their portfolio. You probably know exactly what it is for your clients. And so think about your frequently asked questions and write down a few ideas for webinars that you could cover on those topics. Ask your clients, ask them what they're interested in. Maybe they're interested in, a market update. Maybe they're interested in, how you go about creating your portfolios for them. So that's a great way, is just getting your clients' feedback on what you should cover and what they want to learn about. You could poll your network. So you could do a quick survey from everyone, on your email list of which webinar should I do next. And that's a great way to get effective feedback so that you can create your strategy around an actual data point. And then another strategy is to look into your Google Analytics. So Google Analytics records all of the traffic to the different pages on your website. And so if you do any blogging or if you have a variety of pages on your website, you could take a look at which pages are most popular. Maybe it's your pages on your investment strategy, or maybe it's your pages on your 1035 exchange service. Whatever it is, that can give you an idea of what's popular for your visitors to your website. And then if you really want to get technical, you could test with technology. And so you could create Facebook ads that maybe have ads for two different webinars. Maybe one is on maximizing their 401k benefits, one's on retiring at age 55. And you could test out those two ads and see which gets more clicks. And then you could create your webinar based on the winning topic. And so you want to make sure you do spend a little bit of time selecting your topic so that you're not putting all of the time of creating a webinar into a dud of a topic. So when selecting your topic, we want to think about which one urgent problem do you solve for a specific group. And so these are some ideas of webinar topics that have been popular in the past. How physicians can catch up for retirement in a hurry, how married couples can maximize their Social Security benefits, an overview of the Qualcomm 401k plan investments. And so, which investments are in the plan, what fees you should be paying, things like that. Understanding the Intel pension plan. Plans can be kind of confusing and complex. And so this was a great webinar on the mechanics of the Intel pension plan. And then a mid-year economic update is always a good bet for, maybe nurturing your existing clients and keeping them aware of what's going on. So once you select your topic, then you want to think about your offer. And your offer is your call to action. So you don't want to have a webinar without a concrete way that people take the next step. And so you want to decide on the call to action and build a landing page for people to take the next step. And so for this webinar, you would go to indigomarketingagency.com/offer to take the next step. And so you want to automate the delivery of your offer so that people can go to your landing page, download the report or sign up for the offer or get the discount, whatever it is. Or maybe it's make an appointment. Maybe they're going to add, your calendar scheduler so that they can make an appointment for a phone call with you, and then create a direct link so that you can say during your webinar, go to this link, sign up to take the next step. And so here's some examples of offers. So it could be a 15-minute question and answer phone call. It could be, taking a risk questionnaire to find out how much risk is in your portfolio. It could be scheduling a Social Security review appointment in person. Maybe it's a free financial plan. Maybe it's a complimentary business valuation. This is one of my advisors who helps entrepreneurs sell their businesses. And a lot of entrepreneurs have no idea what their businesses are worth. And so he offers a complimentary valuation. Or maybe it's how much they're paying in 401k fees. So whatever it is, you want to set up a landing page for them to get started, for them to take the next step. And you can see on the right, here's a free introductory meeting landing page. And then once you've created your call to action, then you want to start building your presentation. And so the first step, and this is where a lot of people really get stuck and they really kind of spend a lot of time without getting a lot of results. And so the first thing you want to do is create your text-only presentation first. So don't worry about putting graphics or putting, pretty designs or your logo on your presentation. You want to create your text-only slides first. Then you want to start with an outline. So just think of the topics that you want to cover and start building out your slides based on that outline. Plan for one slide per presentation minute. So this presentation is aimed at about 35 minutes. So I have 35 slides. Aim for about 30 presentation minutes. And that's, some people do longer webinars, but I think with today's people's attention span, it pays to be a little bit brief and to give maximum value in 30 minutes. You want to keep each slide pretty short as possible, maybe 4 to 6 bullet points. And then add your data, your graphs, your charts, things that, especially easy to understand visuals like charts help people kind of digest the information that you're presenting so it's not just text. And then don't add your designs or your images yet. You want to do that later after you get your core ideas down into a PowerPoint presentation. then this is an example of a great presentation outline. So you want to have your title. You want to give a little bit about your background so people, know, like, and trust you, like we talked about before. And then, of course, talk about why you're passionate about the topic. Why do you do what you do? Why did you become a financial advisor? Why does this topic matter to you? And that's a great way to, start upping the ante and start getting people engaged with you through your webinar. And then give people an idea of what you're going to cover, and then just dive into the core teachings. So dive right into your slides and start giving away 90% of what you know. Leave a little bit of time at the end for questions and answers. And of course, if you're doing an automated webinar, which I recommend, you may just want to answer frequently asked questions. They don't need to be live questions, but you know if you're an advisor and if you meet with clients and prospects on a specific topic, you know the basic questions that they ask you. And so you can just have an outline of 3 or 4 questions that you want to answer. And then, of course, include your call to action for them to take the next step. And then you want to design your presentation. And so once you have all the text slides, it's really important to have a professional graphic designer design your presentation. And I recommend Upwork.com. It's a website where you can find graphic designers to bid on your project. Plan to pay about $2 per slide. And so if you have, a 30 slide presentation, it's only going to cost you $60 to $100 to get a professional designer to make it look amazing, and it'll save you a ton of time. Design with your logo and your branding in mind. So this should kind of match your website and it should look nice. It should be in line with your branding. And then make sure you include imagery on most slides. So pick relevant images or have your designer pick relevant photography for each slide. Next, you want to stop and get compliance approval. And so a great place to get compliance approval is on your presentation so that you can put any disclosures onto the slides or change any text on the slides before you actually go through the work of recording your presentation. You want to make sure you have the compliance blessing. Then you want to go ahead and record your presentation. Now, this is really the hardest part. And, it's not too difficult, but so many advisors, this is where they get stuck. And so I want to urge you to really push past this challenge because it is difficult to do a video recording of yourself explaining a topic. You may be hypercritical, you may be a perfectionist, but this is really where it gets difficult. What I do is I use a USB microphone because the audio for your presentation, if it slides with a voiceover audio, the audio is pretty important. And so you want to make sure you have good audio. And so I use the Blue Yeti microphone. You can get it on Amazon for about $130, and it just plugs into the USB port on your computer. And then you just talk right into it, and it has amazing audio. And so I would recommend, purchasing the microphone. And that's really the only big outlay of cash or of equipment that you have to use, but it's worth it to spend a little bit of money on that. And then you'll want to record your screen with the audio on top of it at the same time so that your voice lines up directly with each slide. And so if you have a Mac, you can do QuickTime, which is already installed on your Mac. You just do a screen recording and it's really easy to do. It's super user-friendly. Or if you have Windows, try Camtasia. That's a good way to do a screen and audio recording. And so what you want to do is you just want to capture your slides with your voice on top of it in unison, and that's how you record the presentation. So here are my tips for recording a great webinar presentation. So first, I would recommend that you do a full trial run. If you're doing a 30-minute webinar, this is only going to take you 30 minutes. So do a full trial run and then listen to it. And you'll think of ways that you can improve it. And you can also review the audio and video quality to make sure that it's up to par. And so this is definitely an extra step that is well worth the time, in my opinion. You want to, if you're recording an automated webinar like we discussed, you don't want to talk about time or current events because this could be running for months or years into the future. So like for this webinar right now, what's happening is Hurricane Irma is slamming into Florida right now. I don't want to necessarily mention that because you guys are going to know that I've recorded this webinar on September 10th when, the hurricane is on top of everyone's mind. So now I've dated my webinar and you're going to know that it's not live, that it's recorded and which day it was recorded. That's fine because you guys know that this is an automated webinar, but for yours, you want to leave out reference of time or current events just to kind of keep it evergreen. And so consider answering frequently asked questions at the end. We want it to feel like a live webinar. And one of the advantages of live webinars is that you can answer questions. But just because questions come in live doesn't mean that they're the best questions that appeal to the most of your audience. So think about when you answer questions, think about your frequently asked questions that are really impactful, that help people understand the topic, and just answer those at the end of your webinar, and people won't know whether or not it's live. And then once you've recorded your webinar and you have the video and the audio, you will want to get compliance approval of the finished product. And so this is a great time to get the sign off on the final version of your webinar so that you can play it for the public forever and ever, and it's compliance approved. Then once you have the video, here's where the rubber meets the road. You're going to set up your automated webinar using your webinar technology. So I use Easy Webinar. And so, if you sign up for my webinar, you select the day you wanted to attend, you enter your name and your email, you click to register. That's all through Easy Webinar. They send you the email that says, thanks for registering. They have a countdown page where if you click to view your webinar before the time that you selected, it will say that you're too early, and it'll have a countdown timer, and then it'll send you a reminder email and the email the day after with the replay. And so those are all things that you don't want to have to bother with. So using Easy Webinar or Ever Webinar is a great option. They're about $500 per year, and they do all of the heavy lifting for you. And so you'll want to customize your scheduling options. So I recommend having your automated webinar scheduler give people an option to watch yesterday's replay or to select one of the next 4 appointments to watch the webinar in the future. And so that's just kind of best practices. From there, you'll upload your video to Easy Webinar or Ever Webinar, and so that it'll play automatically as people register. You'll type up your reminder emails, so you want to customize them with the title of the webinar and with your information so that when people get a reminder, they remember what they registered for. And then you're going to create your replay email and add your biography and your photos so that when people sign up, they can see your smiling face and understand, why you're credible to teach this subject. From there, you'll create the registration page, and you can even add timed offers. And so that's when a little window will pop up saying, save $400 on your next webinar by signing up now. And so all of these webinar technologies allow you to add timed offers to give a little bit of urgency to your call to action. Once you've done that, you want to build your registration page. And this is really where you're encouraging people to sign up, and you're telling them all of the benefits that your webinar is going to offer them. And so it's the landing page on your website where people will enter their name and email address to sign up. Consider using lead pages. That's what I use for my clients and for my own webinars. Add the title, add an image or maybe even a video about why they should attend, and then some text about the benefits, and then the registration form. And so this is the page that we're going to promote to get people to sign up for your webinar. From then, you want to set up your automated webinar on your website. And so we want to start promoting it here. So you're going to add it to your homepage. You're going to add it to the events page on your website. If you have an events page, you're going to promote it by email. And this is critical. We want to send an email to everyone in your network saying, save the date for the webinar, register now, and then last chance to register. And so this, it's really interesting when you do send these emails, you'll get about 20% of people will sign up for your save the date email. About 30% will be your register now email is what will get them to register. And what's interesting to me is I get 50% of people sign up during my last chance email. And so a lot of advisors don't think to send a last chance to register for the webinar email, but you can double your registrations by sending that email. So I highly recommend it. Ask your partners to share with their network. So all of your referral partners, centers of influence, ask them to share this webinar with their network so you get new people to sign up, and then share on social media. And here you can see an example of a Facebook post where I'm promoting last month's webinar. You want to add the call to action of sign up for my webinar to the end of each of your blog posts, and then consider paid ads. So maybe you want to do LinkedIn or Facebook ads to get more registrations. And then add your completed webinar to the resources section of your website so that when people are browsing your website, they can look at all of the webinars that you've done in the past, and that's just an added resource on your site. Then once you've completed the webinar, you definitely want to make sure to follow up with leads. So we've worked really hard to get people to sign up, and now we want to follow up and try to convert as many as possible. So you want to send that email that gives them the link to watch the replay, and about half of the people who view your webinar will be people watching the replay. And then you want to send a follow-up email offering to answer any specific question. So it should be kind of a personal email that says, hey, thanks so much for watching my webinar. Do you have any questions that I can answer about Social Security or about the Chevron benefits package, whatever it is? And so that's a great way to start a one-to-one conversation about their specific, unique situation. Urge people to take advantage of the offer that you promoted on your webinar, and then send a last chance offer by email. So it's your last chance to save 50% on a financial plan or to find out how much risk is in your portfolio. Always do the last chance email because it really does work. And then you want to add everyone who had signed up for your presentation to your master email list so that you can nurture them over time with your regular blog posts and emails that go out. So let's talk about what you should expect from your webinar. So I do webinars for a lot of advisors and for myself, so I have a pretty good idea of what to expect. Of course, it's going to vary for your audience and your specialty, but here's what you should basically expect. If you have an email list of 1,000 people, you should get about 50 webinar registrations, which is 5%. You'll get about half of those people that will attend. Half of the people will be too busy or they won't watch the replay, but 25 people will actually watch your presentation, which is pretty amazing. And then from that, you should aim to get about 5 appointments. And so that's a pretty traditional funnel. So if you have 1,000 people on your email list, you should expect to get 5 appointments, which is great. And so all we need to do, is get 50 webinar registrations to get you 5 new appointments. And that's basically what I've seen in the industry. And so that's what you can expect. So think about your business and think about what you've done for your marketing in the past and what you want to do with your business and how you want to grow your business in the future. What if you created one webinar on a specific area of your expertise each and every month? So you would get new appointments every month. Maybe you'd get 5 new appointments every month. You would have 12 evergreen webinars on your website each year, which would give people such deep expertise to dive into when they visit your website. And you would have great deep presentations onto specific topics. So if you get an email with somebody asking you, what fees should I pay, in my 401k, you can send them the link to your webinar and answer their question without having to meet with them or have a long phone call. It's just a way to share information automatically on a specific area of expertise. And you have ongoing engagement with clients and prospects. So one of the reasons that clients hire you to work with and to, manage their investments and to be their financial advisor is because they want to stay educated on financial topics. And so it's also a great value add for your clients to constantly be putting out new content and educating them on the things that they need to know about. And so I just wanted you to think about, what if you did commit to this? What if you did one new webinar each and every month this year? Where would that take your business? So thank you so much for watching to this point in the webinar. I want to give you a free gift. Now, I know what we covered may seem complex and it may seem difficult for you to execute on your own. And that's where a lot of advisors, find themselves. And that's why they come to me. And so I want to offer you $400 off your first webinar. And what that does is our team will create, design, automate, and promote your webinar. The only thing that the advisor needs to do is record the actual video presentation. So we want to make sure it's your voice and your insight. And so you need to spend the half hour to record your webinar, but we do everything besides that, everything from designing your slides to doing your email automations to promoting your webinar on Facebook. We take care of all of that. It includes the easy webinar software fees, and we normally charge $1,750, and now it's only $1,350 through the end of the month. So go to indigomarketingagency.com/webinars to save $400 today. Type your question into the chat and I will email you a personal response. The cat's out of the bag. This is not a live webinar, but I still care about your questions and I want to make sure I understand, where you guys have questions on this topic. And so send me an email or enter your question into the chat and I will personally answer your question by email. If you want to learn more, please sign up for my newsletter, indigomarketingagency.com/newsletter. As I mentioned, I have new webinars every month, and you can take my online courses, which are a deeper dive into any of these topics. So check out indigomarketingagency.com/courses and connect with me on LinkedIn, linkedin.com/in/Claire Aiken, and that way we can stay in touch on LinkedIn. Thank you so much for watching. Let me know if you have any questions, and I really appreciate your time. I hope this webinar was helpful for you.